Okay, everybody. So, as I mentioned, I have Jerry Heasley here with me today. Thank you so much, Jerry, for coming on Rana's Radar. Much appreciated. So, welcome.
Yeah, well, thanks for the interest. I have a lot to say if you want to hear it. So,
I do want to hear it. You have a lot to say because, as I mentioned just then to my viewers, great author. You've got so many published books, thousands and thousands of articles. So with the people that is in my circle, they need to find out about Jerry Hesley. We're going to get to your channel as well, but people out there who know you, I want them to know who you are, what you've done, because it's absolutely fascinating. You're an amazing writer, Jerry. Tell us.
well, thank you. Yeah. So, what do you want to know first?
Well, I've been looking through some of the stuff, and you've been doing this for many years. How long have you been writing for?
I hate to say, but since about 1980 is,
1980.
I did a little bit before then. Actually, I did two books before then. One was what I call the dumbest book you could ever write, which was just I was fascinated with how many of certain cars were built, like how many 55 Thunderbirds were built, how many Camaro Z28s, and there was no resource for it. So I went out to gather up all the production figures for cars by make, model, and body style. And it took me a couple, 3 years, and I came up with a pretty good body of information. Like the post-war Ford figures had never been tabulated, and I
Hmm.
got Ford to tabulate them. It cost $2,500 to do that. It was a lot of money in those days, and so I published this book. And I, instead of just doing all Ford, I did from 1900 all makes. I wanted every make in there, and that was just too big. But it was a pretty good book. And when it came out, I remember seeing it at a swap meet for sale. And so I walk over there. I was just pumping gas at the time, and because I wanted to, do this career. And the guy was selling the book. I said, he told me to put it down. I was looking through the book. He said, put it down unless you're going to buy it. I said, oh, okay. Well, I said, well, and I explained to him, I said, I wrote this book. And he said, so you wrote that book? He said, let me tell you something. That is the number one book here that everybody wants to see,
Wow.
but nobody wants to buy it. They just want to look up how many their car was built. And that's why he told me to put it down. And so I discovered that all along. Everybody wanted the book, but they didn't want to buy it. They just wanted to look up a number and put it back
Hmm.
down. And then after I released the Ford figures, everybody just stole them,
Yeah.
which I should have booby trapped them where you had fake cars in there. And then I said, aha. But that's how Rand McNally and those map makers do it. They put fake towns in there so nobody steals their map. And I didn't do that. And so that book, I had so many people help me with it, and they all wanted a free book.
Yeah.
I was making $2 an hour. A minimum wage was $3.50, so I'm making $2 an hour, and I couldn't afford this book. So I decided to write a regular book on the Ford Mustang.
Oh,
So I write
yes.
this book on the Ford Mustang on the first generation cars, and the royalty schedule. I don't care how many of those books you sold, you couldn't make any money. I mean, the way it was written. Um, some books I would make 3 cents on, if they were foreign sales or whatnot. And I thought, well, I just wanted to do a book, but I kind of thought, and so I figured out that, you have to beware of publishers because, yeah, they get you for cheap and you work hard and, you know,
100%. I briefly looked at that book. You sent me a video, and the thing that I appreciated about this book, honestly, so it's the Ford Mustang 1964 up until 73, is as someone who's learning about the automotive world, and as you can see, I'd like to read and learn as much as I can, especially when I'm out there in the car events. The thing that I appreciated it is it was written in so much details, but it was written so clearly and concisely that any person who was to open it up, it was almost like a novel, where you just wanted to keep reading and reading. So you sent me a small video, and I want to share that with everybody. And even just looking through the video and reading it, I wanted to read more. And I like that. I liked your style of writing there, Jerry, because it wasn't your usual gearhead talk, if I can say it, in terms or terminology that not everybody can understand. So I really like that. Let's see if I can bring that up, because that was good. Yep, here we go, the Ford Mustang.
Well, while you're looking that up, I'll just tell you those books prepared me for a career in writing magazine articles. Because even though I didn't make any money out of them and I lost money, editors saw them, and I got to uh, write magazine articles. In
Okay.
fact, I have
And,
kind of a
and
funny story about that if you want to hear it, but go ahead.
let's play this one, because you've written so many articles, so many fascinating articles. I had the chance to read a few of them, and definitely want to ask you about that.
Okay.
So, everyone, this is the book, Ford Mustang, 64 to 73. And at first, when you look at it, it could look like one of the manuals, but it's an actual really nice novel, and it's brilliant.
Well, I tried to make it very simple to understand. But, I don't recommend the book because I learned so much later about the Mustang and how it was uh, developed and how it was born. And I think I know more than, I won't say than anybody about it, but uh, I interviewed in the 1980s everybody I could find that helped develop the Mustang. Donald Peterson, who was the president of Ford at the time, and other designers. And I found out how that Mustang was really built, and how it came about. It was Mustang from the day one. It was never going to be anything but a Mustang. And I finally got a hold of this guy who told me, he says, "You want to know how that car was really built?" And I did a whole story on this in Mustang Monthly. He said a guy came in here one day and he said, "See this car?" And it was a Lincoln Continental Mark. Well, not a Lincoln. It was a Continental Mark II, a 56. And he said, "Just take that thing and shrink it down into a Mustang." And I had a lot of designers mad at me for printing that article. And I said, "Listen, this is what this guy was a designer. He told me this story. I'm just telling this story. It's not
Yep.
my words." And if you look at a Mark II Continental, it looks exactly like a Mustang, only bigger. It has the high mounted grille. It has the long hood, the short deck, the same, um, you know, um, rear quarters, the same. I mean, it just looks like a Mustang, only bigger. And when we put that in Mustang Monthly, it was a fascinating article, but people forgot it because all that press release information from Ford was different. And
Hmm.
that was just to justify the car for stockholders.
Of course, of
So
course.
I
And that's
fell
one
for
of the
that in
things
my
that,
book because that's what Ford told me.
yeah, well, and that's one of the things that I like about you, Jerry, is you're very real. The stuff that you write, you're very true to yourself and true to what you hear, and that's what you present. And often with writers, and especially with the 6,000 articles, that's a lot, from Hot Rod Magazine to the Mustang magazines. These are big productions, and you've always just kept your own style and written in your own words and not been persuaded. And that's something, sir.
Well, I'm glad you picked up on that because that's what I always tried to do. And I started out with general interest magazines, thought I could make a living with those, writing magazine articles. And it was so hard to get in there. Like, I mean, one of my early magazines I worked for, it was the National Enquirer, and they would fly me into Lantana and teach me more about how to write. They would take their top stringers in, but it was still hard to make a living. And then I got
Mm.
into the niche market of cars because I love cars. And then in the early 80s, um, the new cars were so low performance and so unpopular, and they wanted all these performance cars, that what happened was there would be a whole new magazine on Mustangs and on Camaros and on Chevys, hot muscle cars. And I got to write for them all because you didn't have to be in LA, you didn't have to be in New York or Detroit. The cars were scattered all over the country. And so I was writing at the height of my magazine career. I tried to get a magazine article out every day, and I was on 350 magazine articles a year. And
Wow.
people thought, well, that's just not possible. And I said, yeah, it is. I go to shows and I'll work for 15 different magazines when I went there. I had their list of what they wanted, and I shot those cars and I wrote features on them. I did how to's, all that stuff. And then it finally kind of caved in 2019. It had been getting worse and worse through the years, as people got on the internet and wanted free content, didn't want to buy magazines anymore.
Mm.
They just wanted to Google stuff. And so
And
that eventually,
your articles were so informative. They were so interesting. I mean, you wrote about one of the ones that caught my attention was the classic criteria, and something like that is so valid even up until today because people are always trying to find out how much is their car worth.
mhm.
Is their car a collectible? My car is, it's this old. Is it, how much money is it worth? And I really like that because I mean, during my adventures at the car shows and the car events, interviewing different people and the classics that they have, I often see a lot of rare finds, but according to your criteria, and it makes sense as well. I've only come across one collectible, and that was the 1961 Corvette belonging to Christy Clayson, whom I met at Back to the 50s. And she had the original Corvette, not only all the paperwork, but then, as like you mentioned in the article, what makes it a collectible as well is by getting those awards, the Bloomington Awards, the Top Flight Awards. And this car had gotten both of that just this year. So, and that kind of made me smile because I was reading the article and I said, hey, okay, that makes this a true collectible car. So an article like that would still be valid even up until today. So, yeah, I do
Yeah.
hope people get on top of finding your articles, and they can find it on the internet as well. On that attention, on that subject, something else that caught my attention is you wrote that a car can be rare, but not a collectible because it may not be desired.
Yeah, it's all about desirability. I learned a lot of this from reading Old Cars Weekly, which was a newspaper type. And I learned a lot about the hobby. And I remember in the 70s, Old Cars would do stories on, uh, I don't know if they called them barn finds, but where people found old cars. And we got to call them barn finds. But nobody had ever written barn finds on post-war cars. They were
Hmm.
just too new, too modern, and they were looking at pre-war cars, Duesenbergs and Cords and Auburns and V16 Cadillacs. Well, I was the first one in the barn find space in the post-war years, and my first barn find, and I wanted to do a column on this, and none of the editors understood what I was talking about. They said, well, what if it's not found in the barn? I said, look, it's a generic term,
Hmm.
but they wouldn't do it. And I'll tell you the very first one, I was in Dallas, Texas for a Cobra meet, Shelby Cobra meet, and a guy brought in from Mexico on a trailer 5R002, which was the Jerry Titus Shelby race car. And
Wow.
it was the most historic Shelby Mustang of all time. And people were crowded around it. Even though there was no engine in it, there was just a block in there or something. I took pictures of it, and right away I called my editor, which meant a long distance call, and no cell phones then. And Tom Corcoran, and he said, oh, yeah, we'll take a feature on that when it's restored, not now. I said, no, people are crowding around the car. This is a big deal. It'll be a big hit in the magazine. And he said, no. And I asked other people, and I said, let's do this. And finally, you see this picture here. This is the first post-war rare find barn find. I wanted to call them barn finds. My column finally was rare finds. This is the first one. We went to Mexico, and you'll see this is me in the picture with that red hat on. That's Michael Lightborn on the passenger side of the car, that Boss 429. And it was in Juarez, and a lady was using it as a doghouse in her backyard. So the only way I got to do this, the editor of this magazine was Pete Pester. That's Popular Hot Rodding. And I wanted to do this story because I was in El Paso doing a story for Popular Hot Rodding with MSD. I do these how-tos. I have a degree in physics and math, so I'm real good with technical articles. And I was down there doing a story, and I called Pete. I said, Pete, while I'm here, I want to do these barn finds, and we're going to go to Juarez, and we're going to go around El Paso and show you all these barn finds. And he said no, he wouldn't do it. And I finally talked him into it. He was a young guy, and I could, he finally said, I'll go ahead and do it. And then it was such a hit. He called me up after the thing came out, and he said, we're getting all kinds of calls. People love this article. And so I finally got a column going in Hot Rod's Mustang book. That's a different publisher. This was Argus. And it was an instant hit. So that was a monthly column, and then it went to monthly in 4 different magazines. It was in Muscle Cars. It was in High Performance Pontiac. I can't remember the first 4. I know it was over a period of 2 or 3 years, but I had 4 magazines where I was doing a barn find every month, but I asked readers to send me pictures of what they had found. And it was so popular. So I've done 800 or 900 of the barn finds, and then I moved it into YouTube in 2018. And so people wanted, how do you find these cars? They're saying, how do you find all these barn finds? I said, it's not me, it's my readers. And then I developed a clientele of readers that would, for years ago, I mean, I just did a barn find, one of the best barn finds in history, just 2 weeks ago. In Nebraska, a real GT 500 Shelby, a 67 in the barn since 81. And I went and did that story. Why? Because a reader from back in the day that I'd flown out to Missouri and done his barn find, he called me and he said, I thought of you. I found this Shelby. And I said, well, do you want the car? Are you buying it? He said, no. I said, that's the car I've been wanting. It's a 67. He said, I know. That's why I called you. Come out and get it. And what a treat. I finally got to buy one of those. I mean, on 800 or 900 of those and never got to buy one. And I finally got to buy that car. And that'll be on YouTube, and it will be in Hot Rod Magazine, because my column on barn finds now, we do it in Hot Rod, but I always go out and see the car.
Well, let's put a picture up of what the car is so people get an idea of it. And then I'm going to put a picture of what you found, because it's in pretty good nick.
That's what it's going to look like. Yeah.
Yeah.
That when it's restored. And I did get, this is a red car with inboards. Now that's not it. That's the Shelby. That's the Jerry Titus Shelby found in Mexico. I didn't send you a picture of the barn find because I didn't want it to give it away right away.
Oh, fair enough.
I'm sorry. But that is the most exciting, one of the most exciting barn finds in the history of barn finds, is that picture you just showed. That is a picture of the Jerry Titus R model that was in Mexico at the time. That's how they found the car. And it was down around Monterey, I believe, because, a lot of the race cars, after they finished their racing days in the States, would go to Mexico and race in another class.
But a lot of the muscle cars ended up in Mexico, especially during the time when gas prices hit the roof. A lot of these cars ended up there and then just sat for years and years and years until you started discovering some of them.
Yeah, a lot of them wound up in Mexico, they say. I don't know. That sounds like a good story. And I know it did happen, that the cars were in the early 70s. The gas prices went up, but in
Hmm.
Mexico the gas was still, I guess, a decent price. That I don't know how many. I don't have statistics on that. I mean, I'm hard to talk into saying something unless I have
Unless
absolute
you
proof.
know it, yeah.
I do know that they did go across the border. I don't think it was just because of gas. Excuse me. I need to get a drink of water.
I'll go for it.
One
I've
second.
got some too. Take your time.
Let me just start over. You know, the muscle cars that went to Mexico. I think that the older cars were just going there because they were cheaper for
Hmm.
quite a while. Um, but yeah, a lot of collectible cars were in Mexico because they were exciting performance cars, and that's what the people wanted. I
Hmm.
think that's what it was. But yeah, a lot of them have been pulled out of Mexico. But um, and I've done stories about finding and getting cars in Mexico, and it's you can see them on my channel or
Your
in the
channel
market.
is great. Everybody, Jerry Heasley is what the channel is under, and it's about barn finds. That's what caught my attention because I've been watching it and I love it. I mean, let me tell you about some of the ones that I really liked. Let's see. So one of them was the 67 Yanko Camaro that was found. And the thing that I liked about this story is the owner, John Weaver. It took him like 9 years of persuasion to get this car restored, and he used to race in it. And it's a great car. I mean, it was in absolutely immaculate condition, honestly, for being in a barn and for being kept for so many years. But the thing that I liked about it, and that's similar to what you'll notice on my channel, is the story behind that car and why this man did not want to restore it or give it away and sell it for so many years is because his father had helped him get that car. So he got it when he was 19 years old, and I think it was about 2 3 years after that his dad passed away, and that car was so significant to him that he could not bear to see it get restored or touched or sold. So it just sat there in the barn for that many decades. And it's an awesome story. I encourage everybody to look at that video on the 67 Yanko Camaro because not only are all the original parts there, but the paperwork down to the written note from the dealer guy, the dealership, the man who sold the car had given him a thank you note as well, and he had just kept everything. And I love it. I love stories like that. That's why I'm enjoying your channel so much, is because you really find out all those details and information of what the car means, what that classic car means to the owner. That was
Yeah,
one of
well,
my favorites.
it gives me a chance to combine, finding a car with the history of it. I mean, I call that the last unfettered muscle car. And when I say the last, I mean the last actual car because Yenko would take and modify these cars, but they were sold. The reason they're considered factory stock is the dealer did the modifications and they were invoiced as legal. In other words, is completely part of Chevrolet's, uh, build. Uh, After that, when you would modify a car, we had all these emission standards come into play. And if you modified a car, sure, it was not legal, and Chevrolet could not, you could not invoice it that way. It would be classified as a modified. The Yencos that had 427s put in them instead of the 396, all the upgrades. When you bought the car, your invoice from Chevrolet at the dealer had all that equipment on there, so it's considered stock, and that's why they're really valuable. And in '67 was really the last year where you got a car and it was unfettered by smog. It might have had a PCV valve or something, but it didn't have those air pumps and where you couldn't sell one legally to the public that way. But the '67 was that way, and with the Camaro, outside California. And this car actually was ordered in 68 and a half. It was the last one there. Um, this gentleman and his son came into the dealership there, Yenko dealership in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, and there was one on the back lot that they'd already taken parts of off of for other things like the hood and so forth. And so Don Yenko, here we have the story. So well, you can order, you can get this as a 67. It is a 67 and it's hadn't been sold yet. You know, they didn't necessarily sell all the 67s until 68.
Yeah.
Sometimes they were left over. So this guy orders this and it's all invoiced every which way. And it was a real expensive car because he got so many options. And so he didn't drive it much because he drag raced it a little bit, and it was finally just put in his garage, and he wanted to paint it red. It was a blue car
And
with a
he
red
did, didn't
interior.
he? He painted it red as soon as he got it.
Yeah, and he wanted to paint it red. And he looks back, he said, "Oh, that was so stupid." But that's what teenagers do, you know. And but it was a rust-free car sitting there, and he wasn't going to sell it. But Doug Perry, who's a really loves Yenko Camaros and these early first generation Camaros, he spent 9 years getting to know this guy, going by there, talking to him, and finally, um, the owner decided, yeah, okay. Finally, John decided, yeah, we can. I'm going to let you have it, and he sold it to him. I didn't, you know, get pry into the price. They didn't want to get into the price, but it was a lot of money. It was into six figures. I know that. And so, and there you see, if you want to see it in the garage,
Let's see if we can share a little clip of this.
you'll see it in the garage. And I'm glad they took this picture. Unfortunately, they didn't call me before they disturbed the scene, but I went ahead and ran it because we did a lot of history. We took the car to Canonsburg, back to the old dealership. We took it to the drag strip where he raced it. We interviewed the original owner, but it's unfortunate. I always tell people, I said, please do not disturb the scene. And here it is going on the trailer. Now, there's John, there's Doug Perry. Uh, what we did was we took it around to all the various places and showed it. And that's Doug. He's a very serious collector. And there's the car in John's garage. We did get that picture, okay. But I urge people, because I will do the history of your car. I will forever, you know, uh, label what it is like as your car. You might have bought it new, and you do need to sell it. Maybe you can't afford to restore it, or it's time to sell. And but you'll get credit as the owner.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yes.
And
And that is so good because these cars mean a lot to people. It's whether it's like I've said, whether it's a time where they got it from their parents, or they remember, they've got significant memories. So I'm so glad that you do that, and that's evident in your videos. And especially when Doug says at the end, when they're putting it on the trailer, he tells John, he goes, "This is your car." He's like, "This is your car." Just so you're aware, and I really like that. I mean, speaking of this video, when I was watching it, especially when there's John there, when he sat down in the car after it had been restored, I got teary, and it was such a moment because he was drag racing when he was 19. When he sat in the car, you could just see on his face just how happy he was. You could tell he was just getting back to the time when he was 19 years old,
and
and
here's,
that's
did you see?
priceless.
I just want you to notice that was the restore, and there we were driving down the little town in Pennsylvania. This is about Americana. If you don't let me get these pictures, okay, you lose so much.
Yeah.
If I can be there as the car's uncovered, it establishes the provenance where it's just not like a used car. This car's been sitting. It shows that these people love this car. that it was so hard to part with. But there does come time to sell sometimes. Sometimes it's to save the car. Sometimes it's an expensive restoration. The car's historic. Somebody's going to get it. Uh, this guy that restored it, that bought it, he's good friends with the owner. He flies the owner to shows
Wow.
because he's like a part of the original equipment. He's the guy that can explain about the car. And people love to talk to the original owner. And we
Yes.
just did that with a 66 Chevelle, my latest video. The people got the car running, left the patina on it, took it to the show. It was a hit of the show. Let the original owner and his wife drive it. So, I mean, I go out and do this. I have no sponsorship. I pay for everything. Um, I have a passion for it, but often I write a story in hot rod. And my barn finds are true barn finds in the sense uh, they're nothing's made up here,
No.
nothing's manufactured. I want this. I'm in search of the story. Okay, I'm there trying to get the story, and I interview people. And if I've often here's a good. I just want to make this point. If a TV crew gets there with their big cameras and everything, to me they distort the story. You see, it's a good thing the way that this media journalism has been evolving is that somebody like me can go in and do the filming with a GoPro camera, with an action camera. And yeah, I'm not fuzzing the background, with a professional camera, but this is content. And I tell people when I'm filming, I said, look, don't worry about what you say. Just be natural because I'm going to let you watch this video before it goes online.
Hmm.
You're going to watch it. If you don't like it, it's not going up there. I'll take the hit. I won't run it. Or if you want something changed, because this is your story. This is not the National Enquirer. I'm trying to tell a good story
Yeah.
so that when it goes up, you like it. It's accurate. I don't want any mistakes. So my camera is not going to distort the story. And I told this to Discovery. They're part of a Motor Trend Group that I work for. I mean, I'm a W-2 employee of Motor Trend Group, and that's why I do stories in hot rod. And they like this stuff because I get millions of views. So I told one person there, I said, look, I'll do a show for Discovery, but I'm not going to do it if you bring. I don't want your cameras following me. Let me do it. This is a one camera deal where we do not distort.
Exactly.
It's all about distorting the real story because people, they start talking different. I have some people, I
100%.
say, look,
Honestly,
don't,
Jerry.
this is nothing, this is just a little camera. Look, I'm not, there's nothing pointing at you, and you're going to watch it, and you're going to get it. So
Exactly. And that's why I mean I relate to you because like yourself, I'm a one-man show. I mean, obviously you're by choice. I'm still very new here. But the thing that I like about it is people feel comfortable. People are able to be more relaxed. I mean, recently I was at Good Guys and the organizers there, great people, they were kind enough to give me a media pass. And um, in the past events, I haven't had a media pass. And this time when I had it, I didn't use it much. And it got to the point where, because I like to go into the crowds and walk around with my camera and just walk up to people and ask them about their cars and ask them who they are, what do they do and where their passion for classics comes from. And I just didn't feel comfortable having a media badge on me. I actually just took it off and tucked it into my pocket because I was like, no, I said, I'm here because I want to be here. I'm actually interested in finding out those stories. I want to know who is this person? Why has he chosen this 32 two-door sedan as opposed to any other classic? So, I appreciate that because that's what you do as well. You take a big crew in with you and you start telling people where to stand and what to say. It takes
mhm.
away it takes the essence away from the story, from what's happening, because these people are not actors. These people are not there to show themselves or show their car. They're there to tell their story, and they're not going to be able to do that if they don't feel comfortable or natural.
That is well said. That's That's absolutely the way it is. And but you know who does become my crew? And I don't know if you've experienced this before. Who does become my crew are the car people that own the cars and the people, their friends around there. They start helping. I mean, I had that when I did features for magazines for years.
Yep.
I would go into Carlisle or wherever the show, and editors would pick out cars for me to photograph and to write about. And I'm one person, but they would move things around, move the
Yep.
car. It's the same way with this video. I come
Yep.
in to do it. I mean, we did that Chevelle, and there's one of the friends of the owner, the guy that bought it. Uh, he has a drone. He said, "Can I shoot a few drone pictures for you?" I go, "Yeah, sure." So if you look at the Chevelle, he took a picture of going through the top of a barn with his drone. And I said, I like that. So I put
Yeah.
that in there, and then they like seeing it. And it's just
Because
so
they feel that
fun.
comfortable with you, Jerry. Because they feel that comfortable with you, they're able to do that. They're talking to you like a mate, and I've had that happen too. I mean, I've actually had people hold my camera and be the cameraman if I'm getting inside their car because I'm just there
Yeah.
by myself. They're like, "Do you want to sit inside it?" I'm like, "Yes, I would love to. Can you just hold this for me?" And they end up becoming a cameraman for me at times. So, and I love that because they feel that comfortable with you to let you inside their home, inside their space. And that nobody would be able to be that comfortable with a camera crew with
Well, yeah.
big
And
cameras.
you probably heard this too. Like I've had people say, "Oh, well, that's not real. He put dust on that car." I'm going, "What?" I mean, this is, I can't make this up. I mean, Mark Twain was the writer that said, truth is stranger than fiction. I mean, I can't make this stuff up.
Yep.
I'm looking for a story. Yeah, I like a little, at the start, I like a little conflict or a hook or that we resolve, that makes it interesting. Every movie has at the start a little
Yeah.
hook to it. Hey, what's going to happen? And that's what I'm looking for when I go in. I mean, did you see the Mach 1 we did the recently? I mean, it was a 70 model, had been in the barn, and to get it out, there were so many tractors and things in there, they had to take the side of the barn down,
Wow.
to get it out. So I just urge people, look, I'll come in and do the story, but I don't want you to alter, distort the scene. Leave it the way it is. We'll come in,
Yep.
and you have no worries because uh, or if you found a car, let me go along. I'm not going to try and buy your car. I've never done that. All I do is come in and not distort the story and get the story. And the 67 Shelby we did in the barn that went to 15 million views. The owner says, I take it to a show. Everybody knows it. They mobbed the car.
Yep.
And he did kind of what I wanted to see done. He didn't completely restore it. He left some of the dents and dings, and where it tells a story. Like there's one ding there where people tried to break in the car back in '69 or something, and so I said, "Boy, if you leave that, you can tell that trim piece where the dent is. You
Yep.
can say, yeah, back in '69, somebody tried to break in the car.
I
It
love
gives
that.
the car
I absolutely
character."
love that.
So it's a new thing. I like to forge new things that people don't know about. I mean, that's something that people have started doing. And so many of the magazines I worked for, it was just different. It got to be a formula that they
Hmm.
wanted this, and that. And I would come up with new things like back in '87, I photographed an undercarriage of a car. And I remember I asked my editor, I said, we're going to photograph the undercarriage of this car for a store. Oh, no, we don't want that. Nobody wants to see the underside of a car. I said, restorers do because they're getting into that now.
Yep.
But
They want to see
no, I'm
exactly
not.
how
I'm
much
not
rust
going to.
is
They said
involved.
I'm not going to run that. I went. He said you're wasting your film if you shoot that. Well, I went ahead and shot it. They put it in the magazine after they got. Said, oh, I didn't know it was so colorful under here. It sold out all the back issues.
Yeah.
So it made the magazine probably tens of thousands of dollars. There's a lot of back issues, but it sold out the back issues. I didn't even get my expenses to go there. You know what I mean? But I wanted to do it. And then after a while, I mean, I made money in the long term, but it's a tough go, with the freelancing.
Oh,
I could
100%.
complain about that, and I have people, I don't want to do that, but that's one of my faults is I complain too much. Okay, I'm trying to correct the world, and it's not going to line up. Okay,
No,
I'm
you
done.
stay true to yourself, Jerry,
Yeah.
honestly.
So,
I'm a freelancer myself, and, I've been following and covering the American car events now for 7 months. Loving every bit of it because I love the atmosphere, the culture, and like yourself, I like seeing the stories that come out from this. That's where it draws me the most, just to find out why people have those cars. And I cover all my expenses at the moment, so it's going well, but it's if you enjoy something, and that's why with yourself there would have been so many opportunities for you to change the way you do things. You're getting told left, right, and center, do it this way, this is not good, or do it this way. But I love the fact that you kept to yourself throughout the magazines, and now YouTube has given you a platform where you can film exactly the way you want to film, get the shots that you want, and bring out those stories for yourself.
well,
So
that's it. That's it. And and it was, I've got so many views that Hot Rod wanted my column that was in their other four magazines. They wanted me to continue it in um, Hot Rod, but I said I don't want to do one every month. I want to do one when I have a great story, and I've got to travel to the find and be there before they uncover it. And it's I just feel so bad when I miss one. Like uh, I had some people that have, like, I had a terrific find, and the guy didn't tell me. He said, "Well, you can film the parts coming out of the trailer," and I said, "No, it won't be the
mm,
same."
mm,
And they think I might, that they might not get their car or some. I think some people think that way, and I missed a couple big finds. And the sad part is that story is gone forever.
yeah,
We
well,
missed that.
yeah.
Okay. And everybody would have so much fun traveling along with me. Like when we pulled that car out of took that side of the barn down and pulled that car out. Oh my God, it was so fun. And that is forever there. And that will make that car more valuable because it will always be that car that was pulled out of the side of that barn.
Yeah.
I mean, it becomes something other than just a 70 Mustang Mach 1 Cobra Jet. That's the car that came out of the side of that barn. And that car was in Hot Rod. And that car was on that channel. And we got to see it. And so I mean, 10 years from now, 50 years from now, it'll be
It's
there.
still going to be
And
there.
so that's why
Totally.
they need to call me. Don't pull a Porsche Speedster out of something without getting hold of me or somebody to I mean, nobody does it like me. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that I take a lot of times 100 hours to edit this stuff. I get
Mhm.
lots of voices in this. How many people, I always did this with my magazine article, let people proof the article read in their car. It's their car. We
Yeah,
don't
that's
want a
true.
mistake in print to perpetuate itself. I don't want any mistakes. I want everybody happy and I want it to be right. So I'll take the extra time to do that because I
Yeah,
have a passion for it.
you have a passion for it.
Yeah.
Jerry, one of the other great finds that you had was the Shelby GT 350, one of the thousands that was made for the rental company, right? And as I was looking at that, and then I did some digging, and I found another article from '66 on Car and Driver magazine, where they announced first that Shelby was making 1,000 of their GT350s for the rental company. So let me see, and then I want to share one other one as well that I really enjoyed, just so viewers can get an idea of what you do on the channel. Here we go. It was the one owner Shelby GT350. Here we go.
And I really like what you do. I think that there's so many good stories at these car shows. And if you can go around and mine those, people just have to know about it where you are and um, because so many of the people think that it's just the pictures or it's just the car, the specs. I'm all about the people in the story. And I think that's what you're looking at and doing too.
Oh
So,
yes, mine's all about the stories, honestly. And viewers notice that, and they see it when I go to the car events. I'm not there just taking individual pictures of the cars, and I do that for my own personal use or for my Facebook. I like to keep a collection, but when it comes to the videos, it's about walking through and one showing the atmosphere of the car events for people who missed it or were not able to come, but then getting into the crowd. Like I
mhm.
said, over the weekend I was in Scottsdale and they had all the show cars, and these were beautiful builds, and I had to film it because the work there was immaculate. But I had such a great time walking all the way out onto the green where everybody else was there with their cars, people who had restored the cars themselves. I mean, I met a gentleman who made a car from at least 8 different other car types of makes and models, and I just love listening to the story of what he did and where he got this part from and how the person wouldn't give it to him even though it was his friend. I just hear the most interesting stories about how people build their cars, and yeah, I love it, and I love it. I'm going to keep doing it.
Well, you have to go out with us on a barn find sometime.
I have to. And that would I and we mentioned this on the phone. I said, I would love to come out because one of the things that I do like finding is the originals, the absolute original cars, and I found a few. One was the 1949 Mercury. That was pretty cool because the man's grandmother went into labor in the back seat of that Merc, and that it hadn't been touched. It was just there. It was running, which I also find fascinating. That these cars, after so many decades of not being run, they still work, which just speaks
Hmm.
of how well things ran in the past. But yeah, and then I find originals that have been just kept in immaculate condition, like the '61 Corvette or the Pontiac I found just here at a local show in Maryville. So that would be very exciting for me to come out to an old barn somewhere and just find a classic that would otherwise look like rust and dirt. And then you put a high pressure cleaner on it, or you get the dirt off, and you discover what's underneath. And then more than that, finding out exactly who the owner is and why have they kept this in there for so long. So we have to do that, Jerry. Okay, so definitely in the near future we've got to do that. I'll be coming out to Texas, and you're going to have to take me out to
Well,
wherever you're going.
it probably won't be Texas. It might be anywhere.
Okay,
Uh,
well, I
it
do
could
travel,
be,
so
I've got one I'm trying to do right now in New Hampshire. Uh, I'm going to call them today, so I hope it'll work. But you never know.
okay. Well,
There, that was that. There's the yeah. There's the Hertz that was in a backyard and buried for many years, and I could hardly get to the car that they weren't jumping in there. And I said, "Can you back up a minute? And let me just get some pictures." But when people see this car, I mean, it's like 18 degrees out, and that guy with the was under the car. He just dove under there, and I said, "Oh, wait, don't be pulling it yet. Let me." And here's some pictures of it. They were trying to figure out how to get it out, and without breaking it in half because it was been in that yard buried for so many years. I had to dig it out. And so I
wow.
got to film it getting dug out. But, so many of these people that will run into a good barn find and try and take pictures, and they just ruin the story because they don't get the story. They just think the story is just car. It's
Yes.
just the car, looking at the car. That's not the story. The story is why it's there, what happened, what is it, who owns it, why are you selling it, what's going to happen. I mean, there's just you never know what the story is till you talk to all these people and just go over and over.
No.
I mean, I sift through so much video. I think one of the mistakes that interviewers make is they talk too much,
Hmm.
and I've learned that. I've listened to myself that please shut up and let them talk, because once they talk, oh my God, there's gems that come out of their mouth. Sometimes you're going, oh, I didn't
Yep.
know to ask that question.
Yep.
So, you know.
No, that's very well put. Honestly, I found that out myself as well. And one of the things with me is I get excited, and I can't hide it, or somebody says something because there is the video, and I don't do too much editing. I like to just, show exactly what happened, and I just get excited. I'm like, really? Like, look at what I'm listening, and look at what I'm hearing. And when I'm watching back my video, and I'm like, I really need to tone it down and not talk so much or show so much excitement, because I don't want to stop the
Yeah.
person from continuing to speak. So I'm going to keep that in mind, Jerry,
But
honestly.
you see how I get all these people in there, and I want the people doing stuff.
Yeah.
I found out people do not want to watch somebody talk. They want to see stuff happening, and so that's why it's so important. And we were out, and this was really a bad. This was the day before it snowed really bad. We got the snow stopped, but it was cold,
Wow.
and so you know.
Wow. It's just fascinating, honestly. And speaking of stories, you've written articles. One of the other articles that I really liked that you did was on the where was it? The blackout, the pre-war blackouts.
Oh,
So,
that I put that in there because that's one of my first articles, and I want to. I like to tell people what really happened because that was done close to my home with a person I went to high school with, and had a really interesting story. And I was one of my first stories, and so I'd made a deal with the magazine for that story, $150, 3 pages, $150, and so I had $90 expenses in it, and with the gas and filming and all that, to show you how hard this was. And so when the story came out and it was so well received, they started a whole club from this story about these
wow.
blackouts. And it was really popular, all kinds of feedback. And the editor gave me $100. I said, I called him up, and every time you had a call, it cost money. And my phone bill used to be $1,100 a month, about usually, because I do so much research. But I remember I called the editor up and I said, you told me 150. I just got 100. He said, well, but we just ran it 2 pages instead of three. And I said, but nobody ever said anything about pages. You said $150. I said, I don't care if you rented five, you weren't going to pay me more.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't. But he wouldn't pay it. And I ran into that so often. And of course, I was young then. I needed the money. I
Yeah.
needed that. They didn't do what they said they were going to do. And that's the way. I could tell you tons of stories like that. And it's just my nature to tell them. I can't help it. People say, "Oh, just be positive." No, hey, how about just tell the truth? Why don't
How
we
about
stick
just
with
tell the
just tell the
truth?
truth?
Well,
Um,
speaking of the truth, so with these blackouts, the pre-war blackouts, they weren't very popular as soon as the war was finished. But now they're still a pretty rare find.
well, yeah, I
Would that
mean,
would that be the case?
I haven't. I don't think that stuff. I think it falls under the category. It's so rare that I can't get a trend, and
Hmm.
that's the problem with super rare cars. When they only built three, it's like, well, okay, we're going to have a club meeting, and of course, the maximum number of people that can be here will be three. You know, but it might fit into a more general category too of Mustangs or whatever. But there's something to be said for rarity, but it's not
Yeah.
always you know, because I've never seen another blackout. I mean, yeah, most of those cars got destroyed anyway. They had no trim on them. I mean, most of the cars from that era. Um, so I don't know a trend there,
Well,
but
I enjoyed reading the article because, as someone who's not American, it was interesting to find the preservation stuff that they were doing during the pre-war, and the conservation efforts that was put in. And I had no idea that that went into the auto world as well. So yeah, I like
yeah,
that.
and that car's back in a barn now. So
Oh, is it
yeah, I don't know if it
ready to be
runs.
rediscovered?
because the trouble people say, "Oh, well, all the cars have been found." I said, "Yeah, but a lot of them go back into barns because it costs."
Oh, looks like we lost Jerry for a moment, so I'll invite him back in.